if you could explain what is the crack?
Hey, the crack.
How can I have the crack? What's the crack?
What is the crack? You are the crack.
Welcome back to Audio Crack. We have an amazing reoccurring guest. We have a guest that appeared on the first episode of Audio Crack. We have Donny, the Wonton Don. Donny does. Donny, thank you for coming on. Been a long time. Great to catch up.
Happy to be back. Yeah, the last time was at Camp Barstool where I was trying to talk to you and the connection just kept on breaking up.
Yeah, I mean, pumped that we can finally reconnect with great internet connection. Something I just want to start off with, something I learned literally an hour ago, is that Plato is not his name.
So was that like a moniker, does Plato mean something else? You know how like they call Tom Brady the GOAT?
Yeah, Plato just means broad in ancient Greek, and it's basically his wrestling name.
Oh, shit.
It's like basically calling him the Rock.
That's sick. Because he's like broad and strong like a rock.
Yeah, and he was like a wrestler, and he used to just flex on Aristotle. So like it would be like in 2,000 years if they just found all the WWE like, you know, old tapes and were like, this is a philosopher, like, what's the Rock cooking? Like, this is the philosophy of their time.
Yeah, but I bet Greek wrestling wasn't quite like the WWF. It's probably a little more boring.
I think it was more like MMA. I think it was basically like the only thing you weren't allowed to do was like eye gouging and biting.
And then it was just, let the strongest man win.
Yeah. Which is pretty dope. But yeah, a little ancient Greek talk. So Donny, I wanted to bring you on because we had this mutual interest in Teddy Roosevelt, and Teddy Roosevelt basically established a clubhouse for himself in New York City that I went to recently called the Explorers Club.
Was he one of the founders of that?
I'm pretty sure that he was like one of the founders. Some of his trophies were put in the Explorers Club.
The Explorers Club is sick. So I actually went there once because right before I went to Nepal to hike up to Everest Base Camp, one of the guys I was with, Tyler, who is you've met a couple times before, he wanted to bring one of their flags to the top of the mountain because he was going to be hiking with like the first Native American to ever climb Everest. And so they wanted to take photos with the Explorers Club flag, which I guess is a big deal. And I had to transport it from New York to Nepal without losing it. Like, I think it's the same flag that probably Teddy Roosevelt brought on some of his expeditions.
I think they have different flags for each expedition. Like, was it a small one or a big one?
I think after it was like rolled out, it was pretty big, but it was rolled up into a small package.
So they have the 5 firsts. Their members have the first person to the moon, the first person to the North Pole, the first person to the South Pole, the first person to, forgetting what else, Everest, to summit Everest, and the first person, the Challenger Deep, which I think is Avatar and Titanic guy, the director.
James Cameron.
So very interesting bunch there.
So I was very close to applying because a stoolie reached out. He was like, my dad's on the board. And it seems like you've gone on enough adventures to qualify. It's a shame I'm no longer in New York. I think you pay more if you're in New York because then you can go to the club whenever you want. I haven't been getting back to New York too often, so I don't know how much I would use my membership. But when you walk in, as I'm sure you can attest to, they have like stuffed, like taxidermied elephants or just like crazy animals from Africa that maybe Teddy Roosevelt shot himself.
Yeah, so just looked up. Teddy Roosevelt was a member, a very early on member, but he wasn't one of the founders. Henry Collins Walsh was the one who formed it in 1904. But it's a crazy place. They literally have like moon rocks in it. They have an elephant with 4 tusks. That's like the rarest elephant mount of all time, which is insane. Shout out Dirty Water Don. He took me there, and it's like a really awesome place. So actually, you can go there without an invite to attend some of their talks. So I was like, fuck it. Like, I'm going to attend one of these talks. And the guy who was talking was this man named David Chavitz, who was an explorer and an academic. But he basically, his talk was on the horse and the rise of empires. And he had written this book, and I was like, okay, I'm going to check this out. Sounds pretty cool. I kind of just like, I'm trying to get into this club. And he just tells this insane story about his journey from Afghanistan into Central Asia, like kind of in the region you were in. So you were in Kyrgyzstan? Tajikistan. So in that area, and basically how the Silk Road wasn't actually for transporting silk. And I asked David after the talk, I was like, yo, dude, can you come on my podcast? Like this, I would love to talk to you more about this. He was a pretty old guy, and he was like, I don't do podcasts. And I'm like, no, it's basically like what you exactly just did, but like you just do it in front of a microphone. And he was like, well, then like people won't buy the book. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be able to explain this. So do I have permission to just like talk about everything you said on my podcast? He was like, yeah, go ahead. But he was a really interesting guy. I was like, dude, this would help sell the book, dude.
I mean, a lot of authors do podcasts to help promote the book. I don't think you're going to be able to like summarize an entire book in one podcast.
Right. But just the gist of it. But he was like, had this really interesting story about how the Silk Road wasn't ever about transporting silk. It was more about, and I'd love to hear your insight into this. It was about transporting horses to China because China had really bad horses and they couldn't raise strong horses to fight the Mongol hordes coming in from the North Steppe who all had sick horses. So like the Huns and the Mongols were always having incursions into ancient China, and they were like just had way better horses. And basically horsepower was, you know, the law of the land back then. I mean, Genghis Khan, you know, we can basically, and also Khan just means you have a horse. Like if you own a horse, you're a Khan.
Okay.
And that's basically how you controlled Central Asia, and Asia was just with horses.
I can definitely attest to China having shitty horses. I never saw any good horses out there. That's for sure.
It was something about the selenium in the grass in China sucked. So they couldn't raise powerful horses like they could in Afghanistan, Central Asia, Mongolia, the steppe.
Persia as well. I think like I remember reading that Persia was famous for their horses back in the day.
Yeah. So, you know, Arabian horses, and that basically the reason they call it the Silk Road is because the form of currency, they'd find all this silk on the Silk Road, and it was just these like raw rolls of silk. And the reason why there was so much silk was because they were paying all the horse traders in silk. So it would be like calling, you know, Route 66 the dollar road, because dollars were being exchanged in the trade of goods on it.
Yeah, I mean, and also just horses would be so important for traveling that far. Like if you're trying to get from like China to the Middle East so you can trade with Europe and stuff, you're going to need a lot of horses for that journey.
It was pretty wild because like basically he was saying that no spices, nothing was traded on, especially the route from Kabul to Beijing, than horses. Like there were some stuff that was traded, but it was mostly just for survival on the trail. But most of the trade on the Silk Road that we like usually think of, like what Columbus was trying to find by going the long way around the world, was really just shipped by boat up the Red Sea.
Yeah, so China would go to Kabul and then probably give everybody there a lot of silk in exchange for all the horses that they needed. And then like silk was a hot commodity in Europe. So a lot of that would make it to Europe. That's probably why the Europeans called it the Silk Road. But the only reason for all that silk was because China needed horses.
Yeah. And also the Great Wall of China is way bigger than I thought.
It's enormous.
I know, but the wall we see today, I think currently stretches basically just in mainland China, but it stretched all the way out into a part of Afghanistan, like way back in the day.
Really? Because like, I know it reaches the ocean, and that's a really cool photo where you can see the Great Wall like going into the ocean. But yeah, they kept on like adding branches to it, I'm sure, over time.
Currently, it stretches to the Yongwan Pass, which I can't pronounce. But it actually stretches way into the deserts of Western China. They found remnants of it all the way into sort of near Kazakhstan, which is just insane.
Yeah, because I mean, that whole area, like north of China, is just filled with steppe tribes that wanted to raid and take all of the riches from China.
Part of the book was how they talked about how all horse traders basically were like, why would we sell these guys horses if we could just invade them with our superior horses and just take over? So then horse traders became conquerors. And that's sort of like why the Mongols were so good at conquering, because they're like, we should just stop selling these people horses and just take all their stuff. And that's the exchange of goods.
Yeah. If you look at the steppe, it's just like, it's almost like a giant ocean of grass. And the horse were like their version of a boat. Like if you live on the steppe, the distances are so great to go anywhere that if you don't have a horse, you're kind of fucked.
And the crazy part is that the threat of horsebacked invaders drove up the prices of horses. So the horse trade was just like a no-brainer, because if you had better horses, you invade, and then it causes people to go look for more horses to stop being invaded, and the supply and demand of horses just would go through the roof until 1919. In this guy's thesis was basically when the power of the horse stopped, because after World War I, Europeans figured out that horses' only weakness, because horses were superior to cavalry charges, they even were pretty good during machine gun fire. It was just when airplanes were introduced.
Well, horses were cavalry charges. That's what like a cavalry charge was. People on horses. But then, yeah, after World War I, it no longer made sense. Like, I think actually in World War II, when Germany invaded Poland, it was the last cavalry charge in history. The Polish like charged the Nazis on horseback, and just, I think all of them got mowed down. And then they're like, okay, this is done. I mean, the Polish probably should have known that already. But yeah, I think that's the last one on record.
I mean, it's crazy because when it started to shift in Central Asia, like basically when Afghanistan lost a lot of its invasion power, was Afghanistan tried to invade India in 1919 because they're like, oh, the English are weak after World War I. Let's like get these colonial powers out of here. Like we've sold them so many horses that let's just use our horsepower to overcome them. And the English had pilots set up in North India, Pakistan area, and were just able to stop their cavalry charges from invading India. It was a super fascinating book.
That must have been wild. Like once horses stopped being used in war, stopped being used in transportation, there were probably so many horses. And then it's like, what are you going to do with all these horses now?
Eat them.
I mean, that's what they would do if they were on like a really long trek. And they started running out of meat. They would just slowly start to eat all their horses. But then eventually they would just be on foot and not have any more horses and then starve to death.
I mean, it's pretty wild that, and also horses originated on the steppe. No, actually, no, I'm totally lying. No, they originated in North America, but they were domesticated on the steppe. And it's crazy that they then went extinct in North America. And so Native Americans riding horses, before the Europeans came, they had no horses.
No. But then once they got horses, it was a match made in heaven.
Yeah.
Like that was like all the most powerful Native American tribes were the ones that mastered horse riding.
And it's crazy that they then went extinct in America. Humans came to America. Humans, set up civilization there without horses. Horses then in 1492 got back to America and then repopulated it. And it's like the greatest comeback story of all time.
Yeah. And I'm sure the Spanish at the time were pissed off that like some of their horses got free, and then the Native Americans captured them, learned how to ride them, because then the Native Americans became so much harder to fight after they got really good on horseback.
And it's crazy because Shane Gillis talked about this on his podcast about a certain tribe. I think it was the Cheyenne in the middle of the country.
Are you talking about a tribe that was really good on horseback?
Yeah, they were really good on horseback, but before horses, everyone used to just dunk on them.
Oh, Maybe the Comanche? Because
Yes, it was the Comanche.
all right. Yeah, that's a book that Joe Rogan loves too. It's called like Blood Moon or something.
Yeah.
But it's kind of about the Comanche in Texas when like settlers were trying to settle that part of the country. It was so tough because every time they would, build a cottage, set up a small town, and then the Comanche would come through and murder everyone.
So like the Comanche were so brutal because they were just dunked on by every other tribe throughout their history. And then once they really mastered horseback and horsemanship, they were like better than everybody else, and basically became like a Mongol like type horde that just dominated all the other tribes, and including the pioneers early on.
Yeah. I think the reason that Texas Rangers exist, they were invented to help combat the Native Americans and the Comanches on horseback. So that was like the first division of the military there that just like learned how to fight on horseback like the Native Americans did.
Horses are wild, just like how entrenched they were in humanity and how kind of like not like how they've been totally wiped off the map from like integration into our lives. Like dogs, we just still like to have around.
Yeah. And now, I mean, people still like to have horses around, but it's kind of only a pastime for the rich.
Yeah.
The rich or like the very rural, like people who live places where they still like
have land.
I wonder which parts of some parts of the world they still use horses as like a common form of transportation.
I feel like if you lived in Montana, if you lived in a place where you had grasslands, where you had running water, where you just could like, if it was fenced in, I guess, like you could just have a horse and like not worry about it. But then you'd have to like, I guess if you had a stall as well, and that would be a pretty decent, cheap transportation to and from, your local town. But then like it'd be hard to pack stuff. A car is actually way.
Yeah, I think they still use cars in Montana.
I know, but I'm trying to think of the situation where a horse would be a better advantage than a car. I guess if you lived in like a mountain range where they could traverse better, but even then you wouldn't live there if it was so remote.
Sounds sick though, a place that you can only get to on horseback.
The vet bills are too much, I feel. Well, actually, car payments are a lot.
The vet bills for horses are so high. That's why when horses get hurt, they just shoot the horse because they're like, it's like, why do they do that? Because if a horse has a broken leg, it's so hard to heal because like a horse isn't just going to like lay down until the bones healed.
Well, it's because they sleep on their feet. So it's never going to heal. And then you're just going to have a maimed horse. You can't ride it. I mean, unless it's like a super stud racehorse, there's no point to keep it alive, I guess.
Yeah.
Because it's suffering in its own right.
It's crazy that they trained horses to like be willing to charge into battle, and that's probably what, like when you were fighting on an ancient battlefield, it's probably just the sound, the air is filled with the screams of horses that are just like slowly bleeding out. Had to be terrifying.
No one really, besides Braveheart, no one really depicts horses dying in battle. Like I remember that from like charges and like Narnia and all this, like no one shows like a horse get shot or killed.
Yeah, not in Narnia. I don't know about Lord of the Rings. Like Lord of the Rings wasn't that violent. Spielberg made a movie, which I have not seen, called War Horse.
Oh, I read that book.
Seemed cool. I mean, the main character is a horse.
So I read the book and it was like crazy. So like a guy's horse gets abducted, not abducted, but like has to be sent off to the war effort. And then the boy has to go into war as well. And then all of a sudden they find each other at like the end of the war. And they're like, oh my God, he was like washing off the horse because that dirt. I'm spoiling the end of the book, but it's a great story. They wash off the horse and he's like talking about how he had a horse from home and he was talking to the horse about it. And he's washing all the dirt and soot off the horse's face. And he's like, it had like a white nose. And I was like, oh my God, you're my horse. And it's like a crazy time. And they were going to eat the horse. I think that was the last part. And then he was like, don't eat the horse. It's my horse from home.
Is it based on a true story?
Probably. Like there was a story of a guy finding his horse that he got taken for the war, but I feel like it's not specific. It's not like real people.
We were talking about like what communities of people still use horses for transportation. The Amish do.
True. I think horses were treated a little more disposably back in the day, so the upkeep didn't really matter. And the Amish still kind of have a bad rap for animal abuse.
Oh, I didn't know that.
No, yeah, they're they shoot horses a lot faster than most.
Yeah. I mean, back then horses were obviously they would lose a lot of horses, but they were kind of a form of currency. Like for all the Native American tribes, whoever like owned the most horses was the most powerful person in the tribe.
I think that's why like Khan is such like we think that Khan means like king, but mostly it means like guy with a lot of horses.
Horse guy.
Horse guy. And then that gave birth to horse girls who sometimes have a lot of power in our society.
Are you talking about equestrian chicks?
Equestrian chicks, yeah. Why has the horse girl gotten such a weird like moniker to them? Like why do they got such a bad stigma?
Yeah, I mean they're usually rich or were like raised rich. I don't know. I knew a horse girl in college. She had a great ass, just like a horse.
That may have to do with like the stabilization during riding. It's basically like a squat.
Yes, it's a lot like a squat.
I think it's the combination of of great posterior chain due to the exercise, wealthy, and sometimes they have to jerk off the horses.
Really?
Yeah, no, I'm serious.
Sometimes they have to jerk off the horses. I mean, do you think that falls to like this high school girl that like likes riding horses? Her dad's like, you can only like take up this hobby if you're willing to jack off the horse once a month.
I'm pretty sure that that in order to calm down horses for like the equestrian events where they have to do jumping and all that stuff, like so they're not so yippy, they have to jerk off the horse.
Yeah, I mean, imagine being a horse and you can never touch your own penis. So the only time your penis is being touched or stimulated is if you're having sex. So that's got to be tough because those horses don't always have a lot of opportunities to have sex.
And also, I think the horses can pick up on human pheromones during certain. They get riled up. Actually, Dirty Water Dawn has a great story about this, and I hate to steal Dirty Water Dawn's story, but apparently he had an actor on his podcast who was filming Boardwalk Empire, and the actress who was on the horse was on her period, and the horse was riled up due to this for some reason, and they had to jerk the horse off to calm it down, and then the horse got struck by lightning when they let it out to pasture after this whole thing, and the horse died. And Dirty Water Don says that's the greatest story he's ever heard in his life. And I wish I need to call him because this is the craziest story that no one's going to believe.
At least the horse got one last nut.
Yeah, he was like, that's the way to go. Just getting struck by lightning. And it like wasn't even raining. It was just a little cloudy.
That is tough.
I wonder if this is on Google.
It could be. So have you ever ridden horses?
Yeah. There is a family I know that has a ton of horses, and I'm decent on a horse. Like if I get put on a horse in a group, I can make sure the horse follows the group and, sticks with the path.
Yeah. But I mean, it's not the most comfortable thing for long periods of time, which blows my mind. Cause like, I read a book on Kit Carson and, he would travel from like the St. Louis area to Santa Fe, then Santa Fe to California, just all on horseback, where I don't know how many miles he's doing a day, but he's just on horseback for months. That's
why jeans are so important. Literally, jeans are the only thing you can ride in besides like riding pants that don't just like give you saddle sores, which is like a real thing.
And then like a lot of those tribes wouldn't use saddles, which is wild.
I mean, those dudes must have had like serious calluses on the insides of their thighs.
Yeah, maybe just a calloused ass. I heard that in the book about Kit Carson, he had like ridden his horse for so long that at the end of the journey, they went to take the saddle off the horse and the horse's skin came with it because the saddle had just like become part of the horse.
Kit Carson, he was the one in the Pony Express?
What's the Pony Express?
Wasn't it? Wait. Who's this guy?
Kit Carson was like the hero of the American West.
Oh, the trapper.
He started off as a trapper, but then he was he helped map out a lot of the West because like people would always bring him around as a guide when they were going exploring. And so he built up a reputation as like the best guide. He could keep you safe from Indians. He could always find the trail. He was super resourceful. And then he fought in like the Mexican-American War, helped win the few battles that were fought in Santa Fe in California, and then fought in like the one battle of the American Civil War that was out west too.
Huh. Which side?
He was a legend, and he was even a legend before he died. Like, for some reason, people heard stories about him. And then like on the East Coast, they started writing all these stories where Kit Carson was the hero. And a lot of the stories were made up. And he didn't even know that he had become so famous. And then someone from New York brought him a book and he was like, this is insane. Like he was pretty much a comic book hero of his days, but he was still alive. And he's like, I guess like some of this is loosely based on fact. A lot of this is just completely made up, but I'm sure he was cool with it. It's not a bad reputation to have.
That's wild. I mean, actually, I think I saw that in a Little Rascals episode. Did you ever watch those?
I watched the movie.
There was like some really crazy old, my grandma used to like, when we used to go over to her house, she used to have the old VHSs of Little Rascals and she just like let us watch them. Super problematic nowadays, but the Pony Express was an express mail service that used horse-mounted riders between Missouri and California.
Oh yeah, and so that's how you could get mail really fast, because they would have one horse run real fast, and then it was like a relay race.
Yeah, which is pretty wild. So like the initial price was set at $5 per half ounce, which is crazy because like $5 back then is like $500 now
per half ounce of mail.
Yeah, and that was 1861. So it was 250 times the price of mail through the normal mail service. So those guys were just hightailing it, relay racing it from Missouri to California to wherever it had to go.
Jeez.
Think about the stock exchange. There was probably people rigging the stock exchange. I mean, I guess California didn't have a stock exchange or a gold trading.
Does California have a stock exchange now?
Yeah, I'm sure there's a trading floor in California.
Yeah, probably Los Angeles.
The Pacific Exchange. Yeah. It was a regional stock exchange in California from 1956 to 2006. So I guess back then they didn't trade stock. They definitely traded gold. No, it's crazy just like how advanced we've gotten in communication since then. Like basically they didn't even have any sort of exchanges in California because they wouldn't be able to get the information fast enough.
Yeah. Just like it would, especially if you're fighting a war back then and like the leaders of both countries agree to a peace treaty, like a lot of people fighting the war, you're not going to find out until a month after.
I mean, the World War I book, All Quiet on the Eastern Front or on the Western Front.
Yeah, All Quiet on the Western Front.
That I didn't like. Did you watch the movie?
No, I haven't seen the movie.
Did you read the book?
I had to read the book for school back in the day.
Yeah, I did too. The movie totally butchers the ending.
Okay.
Which is so for those who don't know, basically the ending of the book is supposed to be, you know, the last line is All Quiet on the Western Front. It's about a German World War I soldier who just like goes through this whole war, goes through all this terrible shit. And then after the Treaty of Versailles is signed, they like said, okay, 12 high noon on this day, we're ending the war. And like basically 10 minutes before the end of the war, he just like pokes his head up to look at the Western Front and he just gets shot by a sniper and dies. And it's like totally pointless. And the whole thing was like, he went through all that just like to die in a pointless manner. And like, it's supposed to leave you feeling empty and being like, oh my God, war is terrible. This is so stupid. And then in the movie, they do this whole crazy ending scene where he fights a Frenchman and like dies valiantly at the end, and like it was a lot of action. And it's like that's you missed the whole point of the fucking book. The whole point of the book is it's supposed to be pointless and stupid at the end. And it's like, what the fuck? Like,
I like the book ending better.
yeah, it would have played in theaters if it was anticlimactic and he just like poked his head up and just got popped. And then I was like, oh my God, like it was pointless.
Yeah.
Damn.
It's also like, I don't know how they coordinated armies in wars back then when you didn't have instant communication. You kind of just had to like lay out a plan, and then everyone had to go and just stick with the plan regardless of what happens. Like you weren't really able to like change a bunch of stuff on the fly.
You'd be running. There would be runners in the trenches going from like each command post, at least back in World War One, in like telegraphs.
But yeah, that was World War One, where I don't know, did they have telegrams in World War One? I'm talking about in like the Mexican American War and stuff, where you have no idea what's happening.
All the horns and shit. Like that's like, it's crazy that people used to bring instruments to battle.
Oh yeah, you could use horns to control the troops on the field of battle. That actually had a purpose. I mean, the horns, if you had bugles, then you could like certain notes meant certain things. But then being a drummer boy, that was rough.
Oh yeah. I mean, what was even the point of the drummer boy? Like to keep up morale?
Yeah, I think to help people like march on beat. I don't know.
But once you got into battle, like I could get that, like keep the morale high marching so everyone's on beat and you're keeping pace to the next town or the next battle. But like what's the drummer boy doing like when the bullets are flying?
Once the war starts, yeah.
Yeah, so many field musicians saw combat during the Civil War, but they would stop drumming. So there'd be like 12-year-old boys drumming in like the Civil War, but they were like, once they would get to Gettysburg, they sort of just were helping out any way they could.
Yeah, they would put down the drumstick and pick up a gun.
Yeah, jeez. So they were stretcher bearers. Okay, that's just wild.
When you went to the Explorers Club, what was the bar like?
They just redone the bar. So from the sounds of it, it gets pretty, you get some interesting people at the bar, but I will say the bar itself was very nice. A very nice bar, but there was like, I was kind of expecting there to be like elephant tusks over it and like some crazy build out to it, but it was pretty standard, but it was cool as hell.
Yeah, I heard you could have your own little cabinet there and keep a bottle of booze like in the cabinet. So whenever you come, if you have a nice bottle of scotch, you can just break it out, serve it to your friends.
That sounds like a prohibition, an old prohibition get around. They do that in a lot of old clubs because basically you could bring, like the club can't sell you booze, but you could have a locker to bring your own booze so you could drink at the club.
I like that. Like I want to open up a bar that doesn't have a liquor license to sell booze, but you are like, you can legally drink in the place. So you pretty much just make a really cool room that people would want to hang out in and be like, hey, are you tired of drinking in your house? Come over and drink in this cool ass room that I have. But then how would you make money? Oh, you would have to charge an entry fee.
So, I mean, I'm trying to think. So like you're going to have guys, you got to make the cabinets like basically you have a mini fridge, like a modern version where it's just mini fridges. So you can just put a 30 rack of Coors Light and then it's like, oh, I'm coming to drink my beer in the room.
Yeah, you would have to make the room really cool if people were willing to pay a cover charge just to drink their own beers there.
Oh man. Yeah, I feel like the really, really nice liquor vibe is going a little out of style. Because how many people do you know like are drinking super, super expensive scotch? Wine, I think, will always go that way. But how many people do you know who are drinking like super expensive scotch that they're like keeping in their house and spending thousands of dollars on?
Yeah, I knew one rich guy in China that would do that, but No one I know at the moment. It would be kind of nice. I'm not really at a point in my life where I'm going to start doing that, but you might, like, instead of just coming home and cracking a Bud Light, if you're like, oh, I'm just going to have a small glass of this really nice scotch, it makes you savor it and appreciate it more.
I guess, yeah. When you're at the point where you can like not chug a bunch of beers, and that's the way you chill out. When you mature enough to like enjoy alcohol for the taste.
Are you at that point, Billy?
I'm trying. I'll get there soon.
Nice.
I want to talk to you about our presenting sponsor, Dub. Dub is a copy trading platform unlike any other. It is like the eBay for investing. It is a marketplace where you can copy the investments of great traders or be the trader who gets copied. It is the democratization of access to hedge funds. You know, you don't need the millions of billions of dollars to get the same returns that some of these large hedge funds and the people picking the stocks give them. You can have the concept of picking people instead of stocks to everybody. Today, you need millions, but you don't need millions with Dub. There's portfolios based on politicians, insiders, and hedge funds. Users have built portfolios that track their public trade filings. One of the top performers is the Pelosi portfolio, is up over 70% this year. Maybe because of some of her Visa trades. We'll see. Portfolios are built by up-and-coming traders. So some of the best portfolios are actually from users who have built portfolios with trading with tons of unique strategies. Some of them are beating Pelosi and now have thousands of copiers. Best part is no one can fake their performance because Dub is the first regulated copy trading platform. The company is regulated. Dub Capital is an SEC registered investment. That is the Securities and Exchange Commission, not the Southeastern Conference. And Dub Financial is a broker-dealer member of FINRA, just like Fidelity or Schwab. They're also SIPC insured up to $500K. And the trades happen automatically. So you can just put your money in, set it, and forget it. You don't have to check the market every day. They're trading for you. And it's easy. They just copy every trade automatically. And when the portfolio trades, you trade. It's so easy. Set it and forget it. So I'd recommend going to dubapp.com-Billy. That is dubapp.com-Billy. Use that sign up code. You can get $20 anytime you invite your friend for a week, 1 week free trial. So look, if you invite your 10 friends in your fantasy football group chat, you'll get $200 if they all use your link. And then you can invest that money and grow it. It's amazing. Barstool Sports is a paid promoter for Dub and receives compensation for the promotion of its services. Check out dubapp.com-Billy. Past results do not guarantee future performances. Check out dubapp.com-Billy. Check it out. It's an awesome service. It's going to revolutionize how people trade.
So I do want to talk to you a little bit about Mexico. So the only thing I know about it is that I texted you, was like, yo, do you want to come on the show anytime soon? He's like, no, I'm going to see a shaman, and I'm going to see a shaman tomorrow. I think the exact text is wait. Yo, you down to do audio crack tomorrow by chance? Negative. I'm headed to the spirit realm with a Mexican shaman tonight. What did you do?
So we talked about this on macrodosing back in the day, but about the history of magic mushrooms, and nobody knew about them in the US until this VP of JP Morgan, that was also an amateur mushroom scientist, heard about this tribe down in Mexico that used shrooms in their religious rituals. So he went down, asked if he could partake. It took a lot of convincing, but this lady, Maria Sabina, finally agreed. So gave him the shrooms, did the whole ceremony, and he was like, that was insane. So he went back to the US, wrote an article for Life magazine called In Search of the Magic Mushroom. And that went viral. And then everybody in the US was like, fuck, I got to try these shrooms. And that town, which is the same town where I went, became a huge hippie hotspot. I think the Rolling Stones went down there, Bob Dylan, the Beatles, like they all went down to try these magic mushrooms and then brought spores back to the US. And that's how shrooms became a thing. So I did that same ceremony with Maria Sabina's great grandson.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's awesome. There wasn't shrooms growing on cow patties in the US before then, or?
So I'm sure there were, because they grow all over, but like nobody really knew to eat them in the US. Like I'm sure there were some people that did, but it wasn't a mainstream thing at all. until he wrote that article.
Whoa. So it was just psilocybin?
Yes, I did not do any ayahuasca. I have been invited on an ayahuasca retreat, though, if I want to go.
Dude, I ayahuasca scares me because for every like great story about like people, you know, feeling way more happier and getting all the benefits, there's like other stories of people just like totally going rogue and like changing their whole life. And, you know, like some people like being like, I'm gay. And it was like, you've been married for 20 years. And now you're trans. Like, not that I have anything against that, but like, you know, I don't necessarily, I'm pretty comfortable where I am now. I don't need any big revelations in that way.
Didn't like Pat at Barstool say he'd like decide to come out after taking shrooms?
Really?
He may have said that, but I don't want to. You might want to have him on the podcast and ask, because I don't know for sure.
It may help you discover like something about yourself and be better to deal with certain things in your brain. So I could see that happening with people who are in the closet. But I mean, I think it's way more disruptive to your life to like be like, I just did ayahuasca, babe. I've been gay this whole time. Like,
so are you worried that you might be gay?
No.
Okay.
But it's more like individual, like this one woman left her whole family and became a stripper and like ruined her whole life. Like I've been seeing some crazy threads of like people who have done ayahuasca and it has not gone like the, you know, walk in the park, your life is totally better.
I think there's a boxer or a UFC fighter. He went down and did ayahuasca and he hasn't won a match since. You would probably know who it is. And I was talking to a friend about it and he was like, ayahuasca really helps like dissolve your ego. But in a sport like UFC or boxing, you like need a big ego to win.
Yeah.
But there's success stories too. Like Ron White, who's a comedian, he was famous for just, he would always have a drink in his hand. He was on the Blue Collar Comedy Tour, I think. And he was just always drinking. I saw him once. He had a drink in his hand. But he was getting older and the booze was starting to really adversely affect his health. And he went down, did ayahuasca and like just hasn't had a drink since.
Wow. I mean, I've heard Ibogaine is amazing for that. And Ibogaine was something low-key I mentioned on the campaign trail. And I was like, we need to stop the opioid crisis. We need to make Ibogaine legal in the United States because it's shown to help amazingly with opioid dependence and addiction. And the Republican advisors to me were like, you got to calm down on that. And I was like, okay.
The man. Well, who was your Republican advisor? Was that just like
I
a friend?
I had a whole team.
Was the Republican advisor just like a friend though? Or was he like a guy who's been working for the Republican Party for a while? Or
basically I got approached by a whole team who'd gotten people into Congress and they're like, yo, we could totally do this. And what they didn't understand was local New York politics and certain, like, basically, like if you hire a vendor, the vendor might not actually be acting in your best interest, and might literally be, you know, giving you bad signatures. Everyone hires extra signature gatherers because, you know, doing it all yourself, you might as well have, if you have one, you have none. If you have two, you have, you know, one. I don't know, like there's all these sayings. So, but like sometimes those vendors will also be being paid by another candidate and will just get you bad signatures. The whole thing is crazy. But you know, they're cool dudes. I've had them on the podcast all the time. But like they know how to navigate the circus.
And they know that Republicans aren't going to like you screaming like legalize Ibogaine.
Yeah, they're like, save that for the general.
I've heard great things about it too, though, but I didn't know. I think a lot of people consider it to be the strongest psychedelic in the world.
Ibogaine?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And that you have to get your heart checked out before you do it because there's been a lot of people that have had heart attacks on it.
I always thought Ibogaine was like a little different almost.
I've heard it described as
they're very they're very different. The spirit of ayahuasca is feminine, thus it is known as Mother Ayahuasca. Ibogaine, on the other hand, is both masculine and feminine. Okay, this isn't scientific in any way. This is just like the vibes of. So
I talked to a shaman like a week ago for a podcast, and he was telling me all about it. I think maybe Ibogaine, he was like, that's the grandfather spirit. And then shrooms are like the holy children spirit. And then what did he say was the grandmother?
Ayahuasca is the grandmother.
Ayahuasca is the grandmother. Ibogaine is the grandfather.
So I'm trying to see like how are they different scientifically, and they're just like, well, ayahuasca is the mother, Ibogaine's the grandfather. I'm like, okay. So Ibogaine is indigenous to West Africa.
Yeah, which is rare because Africa is huge, but it doesn't have a ton of psychoactive psychedelic plants. But it's got Ibogaine. I think, I swear my friend was saying that his friend went to Africa to like do it with an actual African shaman and died. I think
The Bawiti tribe. So the Bawiti tribe is the one who figured it out in Africa.
I actually have a great guy for you to have on the podcast. And he'd be happy to talk about it. He was a heroin user for 10 years, went to Mexico, did Ibogaine, and got completely clean. And I think he also does a podcast. So he would be down to go on yours.
Pod to pod.
Yeah.
Yeah. So ayahuasca is an ethereal experience that takes you to the cosmos and teaches you through cryptic visions, while Ibogaine is a deeply grounding experience that takes you deeper into you, connecting to yourself. The way it teaches you is incredibly clear and direct, to the point where you can get direct answers to your questions from your own soul. So Ibogaine is a truth serum that shows you the truths about yourself, which I could see how addiction, it would be better for addiction, because it would be like, yo, you lied to yourself about how this is okay and how you justify it, but it's not okay. Whereas ayahuasca is like, you're gay. Like, hey, buddy.
I think the real way it's supposed to work is that it kind of rewires your brain. So if you've been addicted to heroin, then you have those same impulses that are always going to make you crave heroin. But with something that's so strong like Ibogaine, ayahuasca can kind of like completely rewire it. But I wonder if you search like I did ayahuasca and came out as gay, how common is that? It's like you shouldn't do any of these drugs if you have a history of schizophrenia, a history of bipolarism, or if your dad's gay, I guess.
The effect of ayahuasca ritual participation on gay and lesbian identity. The practice. Okay, so this is a scientific paper by Clancy Kavnar. And basically it's like 17 self-identified gay individuals came out after doing ayahuasca. So I think it actually just, it's more that it doesn't make you gay. It's just,
yeah, no, ayahuasca does not make you gay.
I know.
It just brings, if you've been like suppressing any serious trauma, it will bring it out.
I mean that in the best way.
Yeah. Yeah, like I don't have any serious trauma that I'm worried about coming out, like if I do ayahuasca, but I'm more just like hoping that maybe it could help me be more present, like not get like not have regrets over small things, not get super anxious or worked up over like small things that don't really matter.
Yeah, stuff like
make me more at peace.
Like, oh my God, is this thing happening? Are these people trying to screw me? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, so scientifically, I don't know if there's DMT in ayahuasca, but Ibogaine.
No, Ibogaine's its own thing.
Yeah. So, yeah, so it's a dissociative psychedelic.
Ayahuasca is like a full night intense experience that can last 6 to 10 hours. But DMT, I've never tried it, but I know people now that have DMT vapes, and you just take a really strong hit of the vape, and you'll have like a crazy trip, but it lasts for 5 minutes.
My buddy who played Tufts lacrosse, speaking of Tufts, and I saw you talking to Chaps about the 45-minute workout that gave guys Ramdo. He did it, and he said that he had a whole ass life, like whole life. And it was a 5-minute trip. He was like, yeah, dude, I was living underwater, and I had a whole life in a family, and then I came up and I was just like, damn, I miss my underwater family. And I was like, wait, it was underwater? He was like, yeah, dude, we just lived underwater. And, I was like, were you breathing air? He was like, no, we kind of just like could live underwater. Like we had gills. And I was like, what, man? I played high school football with him. I need to hit him up about it.
That sounds kind of cool. And that was just off of a DMT vape?
Yeah, TMT vape. Those Tufts guys, that story's nuts because I don't know what you could be doing for 45 minutes to get Rabdo.
Yeah, like I'm sure you've had like a crazy hard practice at some point that's made you puke.
Yeah, like conditioning.
I feel like that's usually, and like at that point, you get work so hard that you start to puke. At that point, a coach probably isn't going to be like, keep working through the puke. I don't know.
Because even if you did up downs, I'm trying to think of the most cardiovascular intensive thing you could do would be up down, like I guess, yeah, up downs.
Good on them for pushing themselves to that point. Because if I was in that practice, I would eventually just give up.
Yeah.
And stop. Unless like it's not like the Navy SEAL was like, if you don't keep doing this, I'm going to fucking kill you, or you're kicked off the team.
Because honestly, do you think they're like hungover? That's what makes me think. Like 50 players participated. Rhabdo does happen to a lot of overweight guys. Like you see it in but how bad is this rhabdo? Like did they just get IVs or were they actually like fucked? Tufts lacrosse has always been like a historically great NESCAC team and D3 team. They won the championship. So like it is a very high level program, but
yeah, they're very good at lacrosse. Not so much football. I didn't know that after I graduated, the Tufts football team went defeated 3 years in a row. They didn't win a single game for 3 seasons.
You saw that tweet about Middlebury?
Yes.
As someone who's beat Middlebury, it's worth it.
Well, Tufts wasn't even beating Middlebury.
Yeah.
That's got to be rough for like, I don't know. I don't know why people would just keep on playing. Imagine if that was your sophomore, junior, senior year. Because as you know, even though it's D3, it still is like it's a huge time commitment.
Well, a lot of it's like a domino effect. Like you go defeated 1 year and then you lose all your seniors who quit, and then you have a bunch of underclassmen and they get their ass whipped. It's like a domino effect of how programs can fall, and it's very hard to recruit out of that. And then you mostly likely have to just get a new coach. Tufts has been pretty good, decently.
They kept the same coach.
Oh.
They kept the same coach, and then they eventually nominated him like the D3 coach of the year because he went like 500. And they're like, he overcame so much.
I mean, D3 coaching is insane because coaching has gotten super competitive because, like the salaries have gotten to a point and there's so many guys who go into coaching. Like a bad D1 staff will go into D3 and be like, we're going to turn this program around. And how they turn the program around is basically be like, we have a bunch of voluntary workouts, and all the voluntary workouts in the off season, if you don't go to them, you won't play. So it's like, like this, I bet this Navy SEAL workout was voluntary. And that's how like all these D3 programs basically try to get as much work in as a D1 program, because the ones that win and like do really well are the ones where it's like coaches aren't allowed to practice, but they're, working as the weight room coach in the off season. So it's like this optional lift, like they'll know if you're lifting or not because they're the weight room coaches. That's how they get around it.
That tweet that we saw, I was like, I don't see what's the point of playing D3 sports. But what I want to know is what's the point of playing D2 sports? Because I feel like with D3 sports, they almost function as a fraternity. So like some people are playing to build connections, friendships, and at a lot of D3 schools, you're getting a really solid education at the same time. D2 schools aren't known for being that academically great, and most D2 players don't go pro. But D2 schools can give out athletic scholarships. So is that the main reason that people can do it, just to have their college paid for?
Yeah. So they can give out way less scholarships than D1, but they still can give out scholarships. And most D2 guys are trying to transfer. If they're that good, they're trying to transfer D1. A lot of guys go JUCO, which is a whole different thing. So breaking news, Robert Saleh has been fired as the Jets head coach.
Oh.
Yeah.
He was the only Arab American coach in the NFL, maybe of all time. How do you feel about that?
I'm pumped. I think it's a wash for the season because, I mean, what are you going to do? Get a guy in there to turn it around, and, you can't, no one's won a Super Bowl with a coach change, I think.
People have won Super Bowls with a QB change.
Yeah.
Saleh.
I just have to get a tweet off on that.
Well, you guys beat the Patriots.
Yeah. At what cost? I mean, beating the Patriots.
At what cost?
That was the last time the Jets beat the Patriots last season was basically like the biggest, like, oh, we beat the Patriots, but now we get a worse draft pick and they get a better draft pick. Geez, I don't know. Like, has the NFL ever? So this is a great question for Perplexity. Has a NFL team ever won a Super Bowl after a coach change? Because who becomes the interim? Okay, wait. So the New York Giants, after midseason coaching change, Tom Coughlin. Oh, Tom Coughlin was a coaching change? Okay, so there's actually been 4. Okay, no, but that was a midseason coaching change.
Oh, that was just his first year as the coach.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to look at the midseason stats.
Okay, yeah, so no one has ever made a midseason coaching change and won a Super Bowl. So, yeah, that's the answer to that. But JUCO is the Wild West of football. JUCO is like guys who didn't have the grades to go to college, but were good enough to go. Like Last Chance U.
Last Chance Uganda too.
Yeah, Last Chance Uganda. I might get some of those guys into the country. I've been doing some dirty work, and it's a lot easier than you think.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Do you think it would be easier to get them to America with Trump as president or Kamala as president?
Kamala.
Yeah.
Yeah, way easier.
That's like the main rallying point against Kamala. But
yeah,
we're trying to follow protocol.
Yeah.
And these guys, it's not like they're coming here to take our jobs. Well, if they make it to the NFL, maybe they'll be taking someone's job.
Yeah. I mean, the hard part is the hard part is visas. Like, we've been trying to do the school route. The school route hasn't been doing too well because, football's like no school. The schools that would have the student, the foreign student assistance that could help get them in, they don't have the grades for. And the schools in the football doesn't have enough pull with the foreign student services. And, the schools that they could play for don't have the foreign support. So it's a weird situation. We've been trying to actually go through the Disney hospitality school, which accepts a lot of foreign individuals, especially from that part of the world, to train them in hospitality and then work at a Disney resort. And then, it's basically the Harvard of hospitality, the Disney school. So that might be a way. Their application is still in limbo there.
If they could work for Disney?
Yeah, so they might have to go work for Disney, basically, and then that's how they get in with a work visa, because Disney's got a lot of pull in that regard. Or we could just get them to get a flight to Mexico, and then we just meet them in San Diego. So,
Is it that easy?
You need $10K to give to a coyote.
Do you know that Channel 5 guy, Andrew Callahan? He's like a big YouTuber, but he filmed a video of himself. He went to Africa and then filmed a video of himself sneaking into the US.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
He got in serious trouble. He was more just like showing like how you do it, how like, yeah, it's not that hard. And even though he's a US citizen, he got in serious trouble.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it seemed like he was shocked that he got in trouble. Like he didn't think, he was like, well, I'm American. Like what? Well, why can I get in so much trouble? But you can't just cross a border illegally like that.
Even as an American? I mean, I guess he definitely bribed foreign officials.
I don't know if he did. I think he just found like an area of to tell you the truth, I haven't seen the video, but I know he was like very mad about how much trouble he was in. Seemed like he didn't really. Yeah. So after crossing the river, Andrew and his cameraman were arrested by the United States Border Patrol for illegal entry.
So he got a federal misdemeanor, not a federal felony. So it's the failure to declare law. Yeah. So that's what he didn't get. So basically, if you enter the country, you have to check in at a border, like a border crossing.
Okay.
So like if he had crossed the river and then walked to a border crossing, that would have been allowed.
Okay.
But he was caught by agents before. I may be a little wrong on that. So don't let me look at the information on that. But yeah, I mean, it's tough to get people into the country, and basically working at could get them a job in construction, but getting them into the country first is the hard part. They need to get a tourist visa first, and that's hard in itself.
Yeah, I tried to get my guy Jamal, who was my tour guide in Tajikistan, a tourist visa. I bought him a flight. I sent an invitation letter explaining that like he was my guide and we became friends. And I just want to show him around my country the way he showed me around his. And it was just immediately rejected. And then like I looked up, I was like, how many Tajikistani immigrants are there in the US? And like I could find zero information. I think there are very few Tajikistani people in the US.
Well, if you looked at the border crossings, and you look at the interviews, there's like a ton of Georgians and Central Asians coming across the border. It's not just, like it's people coming from Europe as well, like Georgia, Belarus, the ones non-NATO.
Okay. It says right here, there's only 6,000 Tajiks who live in the entire U.S.
Well, what's the population of Tajikistan? Let me look that up. So they're 9.9 million. Okay. Wow.
Most reside in Brooklyn, Philadelphia, Chicago, well as in Washington, D.C.
I mean, realistically, we need to make it so that our southern border is way more protected, and we just make it easier for all these other people to come in legally. Like, why the fuck hasn't anyone done this?
If you ran for president on that, I could get behind that.
Dude.
Yeah, it's not like America's not anti-immigrant. We just want it done legally.
Yeah. I mean, the two guys who are running in the district that I am, they're having a debate actually tonight. The debate is tonight between Tom Swazi and Mike LaPetri-Dish. And it's like, how crazy it would be if I just showed up out of nowhere and just was like, what the fuck's up, motherfuckers? You're stealing money from the government, and you used dirty local politics to cede power.
I think you should do it. Film it.
Actually, where is it? It's on New York 1. Should I do this? New York 3 debate. How to watch the New York 3 debate.
Is it on like the C-SPAN?
Yeah, it's on New York 1.
Okay.
I don't even want to get back into Congress because I'm not even running.
Politics, man.
Yeah, I don't think I'll get back into it. It's really not done anything good for me.
It's not, dude, but it's crazy how like we don't have great candidates on either side. And I think it's just because all the actual like smart and people that would be good at the job don't want the job.
Well, also, it's just impossible unless you're entrenched in the system. It's something I found out by just saying like, fuck it. Let's see what happens if I run. Like they will take you out before you can even start. So someone who's well-meaning and can't be controlled.
All right. Well, you'll get them next time. And
do you think I should run again?
I think you should only run again if you have a much better plan. So you don't have to rush it, but maybe in like 3 years, 5 years,
2 years, 2 years when it would be, we could run it back.
In 2 years.
It was a little rushed last time, but for all we did for the rush.
Yeah. Like I wouldn't be shocked to see you win an election in the future. It's definitely doable. I mean, you're not even close to as bad as that other dude. Who is the guy that just got caught lying about fucking
Walls?
No, not Walls. The dude who got
Santos. Another reoccurring guest on Audio Crack.
Santos.
Fucking Mayor Adams is bullshit. I mean, that's crazy. This guy's getting bars of gold for giving certificates of occupancy and fire ratings for terribly constructed buildings right next to the UN.
They were handing him bars of gold?
Yeah, he's got bars of gold. They got him on tape. It was him and the guy from New Jersey who was accepting money from Turkey and Morocco. It's crazy shit happening. New York politics is insane. It's insane. And getting into it is wild. Hey, you know what I do think? If there is a mayoral special election and Trump doesn't win the presidency, he should just run for mayor of New York because I think he's the only person who could actually clean all this shit up. And I think the people of New York would appreciate that.
Would appreciate Trump? That's probably where he's hated the most out of the whole country.
Yeah, but he knows how to get shit done in New York. I think people would be like, yeah, he should have been mayor of New York. He shouldn't have ran for president.
I mean, maybe that was like way back in the day, but now he is like pissed off everyone in New York, and I don't see that happening.
I think if Trump goes, hey, I'll drop out of the presidential election if I get to be mayor of New York, I think everyone would vote for mayor.
That sounds like a win-win for everyone.
I'd be down with that.
All right.
Well, Donny, thanks for coming on as always. Appreciate it.
Let's do it again.
You got anything coming up in the near future?
I got a new podcast that is coming out soon, but I'll be sharing more details on that. And we'll definitely be having you on as a guest.
I'd love to. I'm actually going to be in Chicago the Monday after Thanksgiving.
I'm either going to be in Chicago or I'm going to be heading to Turkey to get a bunch of people hair transplants. We got to figure that out ASAP.
Yeah. Make sure they got clean needles.
If White Sox Dave gets HIV in Turkey, though, it would be great.
That would be terrifying. Subscribe to the YouTube, guys, and interact with the episode. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Daddy used to knock them down, yeah, and I should have known not to mess around with the nightlife or the bright lights or the women who won't be my wife. He told me, Sonny, leave them vices on the shelf. Oh, but the dog's in the dive with a silver bullet, and if a keg's